The most painful hunger is not always the hunger in the stomach. Sometimes what hurts the most is the hunger for dignity, for being seen, for feeling that you still have value, even when the whole world passes you by as if you were invisible. And it was in this deafening silence that a street girl had the courage to ask a question that froze an entire restaurant. "Can I wash the dishes so I can eat the leftovers?" This isn't just a heartwarming story. It's a mirror, a reminder that behind every lost glance on the sidewalk, there may be someone who just needs a chance, a gesture of love, a spark of empathy to start over. When the restaurant owner heard that phrase, he could have ignored it, but he chose to do the unthinkable, and that's exactly what changed everything, for her, and for him too. Get ready to meet one of those stories that touch the heart, but that also poke the soul. Because in the end, maybe the question is not what you would do in Ottavio's place, but whether you would have the sensitivity to see what so many ignore every day. Let's go together. It was just another ordinary day at the restaurant. Tables full, silverware clinking, good smells in the air, until a street girl, dirty, thin, and with firm eyes despite her hunger, walked through the door and made the world stop. "Can I wash the dishes so I can eat the leftovers?" The simple and blunt phrase fell like a bolt of lightning amidst the laughter and conversation. Some swallowed hard, others laughed awkwardly, but no one could pretend they hadn't heard. Here was much more than a starving child. Here was a silent cry of dignity, trying to survive amid indifference. It was the kind of exciting story that no one expects to see live, but that reveals everything: the hunger, the indifference, the gap between those who have too much and those who don't even have enough to ask for. And at that moment, the restaurant stopped being just a place to eat. It became a stage. The girl, whose name we would later learn his, did not beg. She offered work in exchange for scraps. This was not just solidarity, it was a cry for rescue of dignity, for one chance to start over. And do you know what's most disconcerting? It's realizing that perhaps in our daily lives we've already ignored many requests like this, disguised as low looks and long silences. As everyone's eyes turned to Leah, no one expected anyone to act. But from the back of the restaurant, Ottavio, the owner, stood up without saying anything. With firm steps, he crossed the room in silence, looked at the girl, and with a simple but powerful gesture said, "Bring her a plate, just like the one at table 3. And so, without speeches, he did the unthinkable. The impact was immediate. The waiter hesitated, the customers whispered. After all, it was more comfortable to pretend the girl didn't exist. But Ottavio chose empathy instead of etiquette, a royal generosity instead of appearance. In a world accustomed to turning its face away, he dared to look straight in the eye, and that changed everything. An entire restaurant was placed in front of a mirror. That silent gesture was more than an act of kindness. It was a statement, a reminder that a restaurant can serve much more than food. It can offer food and compassion, can be a space for encounter, and not for exclusion. Ottavio did not do anyone a favor. He broke a cycle, and like every break in a pattern, this is uncomfortable. But it also inspires. Leah sat down slowly, almost in disbelief. The plate arrived full, fragrant, colorful. Rice, beans, steak with onions, fries, salad, and a glass of juice. She clasped her hands together, as if she were about to pray, but she just took a deep breath and began to eat. Each bite was a battle won, a piece of life being given back, and no one there could look away. Some saw there a street girl, others an intruder, but Ottavio saw humanity. I saw someone who deserved to be there as much as any client in a suit. He observed her in silence, as if he had already been through something similar, because that was it, solidarity of those who understand, of those who recognize their own pain in the eyes of others. The room was divided. Some whispered, others looked away, but Leah continued eating steadfastly. There was no despair, only caution. It was an exciting story happening in front of everyone. A hungry child was being fed, yes, but most of all, he was being respected. And that, my friend, feeds much more than the body. When Leah finished her meal, she cleaned her plate with the look of someone who knows the value of each grain. She didn't ask for anything else, didn't try to talk, just made a shy gesture with her head in thanks. But Ottavio didn't stop there. He went to the kitchen, prepared a bag with fresh bread, some fruit, juice, and went after the girl. On the sidewalk, he reached Leah with calm steps. He handed her the bag and said simply, "Take it to your mother." It was one of those gestures that do not require applause, because they are born from the soul. An act of kindness pure, one silent help, no spotlights, just presence. And Leah, still without smiling, received the gift as if holding something sacred. Ottavio then did something few would do. He followed the girl from afar, curious, yes, but also worried. He walked through the streets silently, like someone carrying something heavier than bags, and what he found at the end of the journey was even more touching. A makeshift shack, a weakened single mother, and the silence of poverty, saying everything without saying a word. When he saw Leah enter the shack and hug her mother with the bag in her hands, Ottavio felt something awaken inside him. That simple but intense scene brought back an old, almost forgotten memory, that of a dirty boy sitting on the sidewalk holding his hunger with his arms crossed. It was him. The past came back like a whirlwind, full of smells, images, and pain. That night, Ottavio returned to the restaurant a different person. He went to his office, opened a drawer, and took out an old photo. In it, a boy who looked like Leah, skinny, tired, next to a smiling old cook. The image spoke. That was where it all began. A gesture of food and compassion that had kept him alive, and now the cycle repeated itself. A life transformation that he had lived did not come from money, but from a gesture of love, silent years ago. And when he saw Leah and her mother Marcia in that forgotten land, he knew he had the chance to do the same for someone. More than just feeding, it was time to rescue dignity of someone who was tired of being invisible. And you can't learn that from any book, you just have to live it. The next day, before the restaurant even opened, Ottavio was already up. He set aside 2 warm lunchboxes, a bottle of tea, a piece of bread and fruit. He packed everything carefully and left silently through the still sleeping streets. He discreetly left the bag in front of the shack, without a note, without a signature. Only caution spoke louder, and so began an invisible but powerful routine. Every day, very early, he would pass by the same place, leaving food, clothes, even medicine, all with care and discretion. He didn't knock on the door. He didn't expect thanks. It was the purest, silent help, the one that transforms without fanfare, that changed destinations in the detail, in the invisible. Leah and Marcia didn't know who was leaving the presents, but they started to wait. Little by little, their mother regained her strength. The girl gained color. The cycle of solidarity acted, without needing a camera or a headline, and Ottavio, in his quiet way, kept alive what was once given to him, a chance to start over, watered with respect and presence, like an act of kindness should be. After days of observing from a distance, Ottavio decided to take it a step further. He wrote a handwritten note and placed it on the bag of food. "Today I want to invite you to lunch again. You and your mother. No exchange, no shame. Just come." He signed with the name and address of the restaurant. It was more than an invitation. It was an opening of the door, a promise of welcome. At 1 p.m. sharp, Leah arrived hand in hand with Marcia. The girl had attentive and steady eyes. Her mother was insecure but well-groomed, with a clean dress and discreet lipstick. Ottavio welcomed them with a kind gesture, a restrained smile, and a place at the table. He served the day's lunch with care. There was no mercy there. There was empathy, respect, food, and compassion. During the meal, Ottavio spoke little, but when he finished, he looked at Marcia and shared his own story. "I also grew up on the street, and I survived because someone gave me a plate without asking anything." He then offered her a formal job with a signed work contract and transportation vouchers. For Leah, he promised school. It was the beginning of something new, a real gesture of love. Marcia started working the following week. She was given a simple uniform, patient guidance, and for the first time, a place where she wouldn't be judged. She still trembled with fear, made mistakes, and apologized too much. But no one yelled at her. Little by little, she began to realize that there was more to her than just a job. There was a place where rescue of dignity, it was real. Leah, on the other hand, received new school supplies, a blue backpack, and a blank notebook full of promises. She sat in the corner of the kitchen drawing while she waited for her registration to be finalized. When she finally started school, she wore her uniform with pride. There was a sparkle in her eyes that said, "Now I exist." This was more than just studying. It was life transformation. Over time, mother and daughter began to live in a small room rented with Marcia's salary. Small, but clean, safe. For the first time, they had a bed of their own. Ottavio never talked about what he did. He didn't brag, he didn't demand recognition. For him, royal generosity doesn't need an audience. And deep down, everyone in the restaurant knew something there had changed forever. Ottavio, without fanfare, set up a shelf near the cash register. He placed bread, fruit, and lunchboxes from the day before there, all neatly wrapped. A handwritten note read, "If you are hungry and embarrassed to ask, take it here. No one will judge you." It was another discreet but powerful action, a space where food met compassion and respect came before any rules. Some employees were surprised, others questioned whether it would attract too many people. Ottavio responded calmly, "If it attracts hungry people, then that's exactly what it has to attract." The restaurant became more than a business. It became a support point, a place where solidarity, it was not an exception, but a culture, and where silence said much more than rehearsed speeches. The most curious thing, Ottavio never talked about what he did. When someone asked about Marcia and Leah, he would just say, "She works here. Her daughter studies." That's it. But his eyes gave it all away. The restaurant gradually adapted to this philosophy. Employees began to ask more questions about their colleagues. Customers began to discreetly donate clothes. Act of kindness became contagious. One night of heavy rain, while closing the restaurant, Ottavio saw a boy crossing the street with a bag on his back, trying to protect himself from the water. He must have been about 10 years old, with worn clothes and a suspicious look, a reflection of the Semestri girl who one day entered there hungry and courageous. Without thinking, Ottavio prepared a package with bread and fruit and crossed the street. He didn't ask anything, didn't ask questions, or even ask for a name. He just handed over the bag, nodded, and went back to the restaurant. The boy ran with the package tight to his chest, as if he were carrying gold. Leah, who saw the scene, murmured, "He has the same look I had." And in that sentence was the key to everything. The empathy cycle had started again. Ottavio knew what started with a plate of food turned into something much bigger. Helping one person doesn't change the world, but it does change the world, these person, and that's enough. When we see what no one else sees, we build bridges, and sometimes those bridges save us. The restaurant was now a symbol of something rare, respect without demands, compassion without spectacle, life transformation with silence and truth. Time passed, but something remained in the air. That restaurant would never be the same. Ottavio, Marcia, and Leah did not make headlines, nor did they need to. The real change of destination does not require a stage, only presence. And in that daily, silent presence, a new story emerged, made of solidarity, respect, and small actions that together transform lives. At school, Leah shone. She got good grades, received praise from her teacher, and with a bookmark given to her by Ottavio, she promised, "One day I will write my story and my mother's story." Marcia, now more confident, walked firmly, organized cutlery, and smiled with her eyes. What began as a simple plate of food became the basis for rebuilding everything: self-esteem, routine, hope. And Ottavio? He was still the same, silent, firm, wearing an apron, but his eyes spoke. He knew he had done something great, even if in silence. Stories that touch the heart, they don't need a soundtrack or applause. They need truth. And in the end, perhaps the greatest lesson is this. It's not about how much you give, but about how you see what no one else wants to see. What if it were you? If you saw a hungry child asking to wash the dishes in exchange for food, what would you do? The truth is, we can't always change the whole world, but we can change someone's world. And sometimes, all that person needs is just this, to be seen, to be heard, to be welcomed with dignity. Maybe you don't have a restaurant like Ottavio, but you have choices every day. You can pay attention to those who are usually ignored. You can reach out without expecting a reward. You can practice silent help, a discreet solidarity, a royal generosity, because deep down, that's what transforms. Not what you have, but what you choose to share with your heart. Now tell me, what would you do in this situation? Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave your comment below, say which city you are watching from, and share this video with someone who believes in the power of empathy. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our stories that touch the heart. The next one might be the one you needed to hear the most. See you soon.